Namaskar, myself Dr. MP Mishra, Faculty, School of Computer and Information Sciences. I am with you in this particular session on a topic related to object-oriented analysis and design, and the topic of our discussion for this session is object design. As a student of computer science, we know it is our learning or job as a student to learn about the system and then to find out that what actually the purpose of that particular system is, and then prepare a design for it and finally implement it. So this is something very basic which we as a student of computer science try to learn and try to implement and try to demonstrate our skill around these aspects. And in association with this, we study many courses, and our object-oriented analysis and design course of the MCA program is for that purpose. So in that course, if you see the study material, you will find that from very scratch the things are given, and we are also interacting with you with the help of different video lectures or different video sessions, and this session is one among them. And as far as the learning related to object design is concerned, so we all know that in object oriented analysis and design we try to depict the concept related to object orientation, and there are very standard and basic concepts around which object oriented analysis and design goes, and in that this object design concept is one of the important concept, and this concept comes at a little later stage, and that later stage is that after analysis we do design and then we try to do the object design. So that we will be discussing about. And before I move to the slides, let me tell you that whenever we try to design a system, what we are going to do? First, we analyze the system. So in analysis, we are actually trying to find out for what purpose that particular system is to be designed, or what is the purpose of that particular system. And then we try to find out different components, different subsystems, and the architecture of the system, and the tools in which, tools means the programming language or the platform in which that particular system is to be implemented. This goes into design. And something which is beyond that, if there is certain gap in the analysis and in design, that we try to fill up with the help of object design. So that we will be discussing today. So let us move and see what actually an object means. So if we talk about the object, so object is nothing but something existing in the real world. So it is a real world entity that is having certain behavior and state, and it is having certain attributes associated with it. So we can say something which is participating in the system. It has states and it has behavior. Some example of the objects we can see on the screen, like student object, account object, book object, teacher, customer, order, employee, manager, maybe product. If you are talking about some other system or some other domain, maybe the customer. If you are talking about some travel or tours and travels domain, then you may go for the room booking, ticket, and in that particular system you will try to find out different entities which are participating in the system or in that particular machine. Basically, when we are saying a system, it means that a specific machine we are trying to develop, and that is nothing but our software machine. That particular software machine is performing certain operations with the help of participating entities, and those entities are nothing but our different objects, and we have to very first identify those all objects in the system, that what all those entities are there in the participation. For example, if we take the online learning system, so in that you will find the student object, the tutor object, maybe some evaluator object, some object for the purpose of moderation. So you can say the moderator object. Like this, you will find different objects are participating in different domain of the services or different kind of applications or different kind of machines which we are developing. Now, if we go for the activities of the object design, then we can say that object identification and analysis is the very first activity that we have to do. Then we have to establish relationship and interaction among the objects, how the objects are communicating to each other, what kind of messages objects are passing to each other. Then next comes that behavior and methods identification and the algorithm which will be used for the purpose of implementation of those behavior and methods, and then object testing and debugging. So that object testing and debugging will include the designing of test cases, test report, and then some kind of result associated with that. Or if you are finding some error or some mismatch or some gap between the proposed system and the performance of the developed system, then you try to patch up that particular, or you try to engage in the modification of certain activities, certain operations, so that you can meet the specific requirements which are supposed to be performed by that particular system. Now, if we talk about the object design phases, then we have to first object identification, do object identification, then we have to represent object relationships, how objects are related with each other. For example, student object and teacher object, so how they are related, what are their type of relationships, how they are communicating with each other. So it includes that construction of design model for that particular system, and then classification of operation. And if you are doing the classification of operation, so gradually you move towards the classification of different objects and making group of similar objects, and then making classes, and then class diagram, and then implementation of the internal activity or internal action. For that purpose we select the algorithms, and we look for the designing of the relationship of different objects existing in the system, and implementation of control for some external interpretation or internal interaction in the system, that we take care. And what additional packages, classes or associated modules we are using, which are already available to us, we can say from outside of the world, or already available component that we are using in the system. That is also very important, because in designing process you may find that there are some objects that you have to design independently, and those objects you can use in your system. So for that purpose we see that what are the applications object and what are the systems objects, and accordingly we try to identify those different objects and use those objects in the system for the purpose of implementation. Now, if we very closely look into design aspects, so we can say that the very first things comes that analysis. So in that analysis we reduce the gap between the problem and machine. Machine means our software, by identifying objects representing the basic concepts which are to be performed by that particular system, means the purpose. During analysis we describe the system in terms of external behavior of that particular system, such as the functionality, what kind of functionality that system will be performing. For example, some live video sessions in the case of the online learning system, assignment submission process or assignment submission functionality, some kind of doubt clearing module, in that you can put certain questions and you are getting certain response on that. So these are the functionalities of the system. So in application domain concepts you have to see that how these different entities or different objects are participating, what are the behavior of those objects, how those objects are related with each other, and how by combining those different entities we are in position to perform the operations which are expected by that particular system. That comes in the domain concept. So we are talking about the educational domain, and taking example of online learning system, then obviously in that particular domain, whatsoever concepts or whatsoever things we are perceiving or we are thinking about that this particular learning management system will be performing or will be providing these services to us, the purpose, that purpose comes from the specific domain. And for that we say that for implementation of any system or for analysis, design and then implementation of any system, we need the domain knowledge. Until unless we are having proper domain knowledge, always there will be gap in the analysis. We will not be in position to clearly identify the purpose of the system. Then obviously our design also will not be proper, and gradually the later stage object design and its implementation cannot be done as per the specification or as per the requirement which we were thinking and we are developing finally the system. So that analysis part is very important, and in that the domain knowledge is the key. And further, if I say the behavior in terms of interaction, that is the participation of different objects in the system, how different objects are participating or taking care of each other's request or providing service to each other with the help of interaction, with the help of message passing, and some non-functional requirement like the performance of the system, scalability, usability. One important aspect is the security. So functional as well as non-functional requirement of the system we try to find out during the analysis and see that how these things can be met. Then comes the design, and in design we try to reduce the gap between the problem and the actual system which we will be developing by defining hardware software platform that provide a higher level of abstraction than the computer hardware. So it is not that individual computer machine you are having and in that particular you are developing the system. Even inside the computer also you are choosing what actually required for your system development, and you are basically doing the kind of abstraction as per your specific requirement in the system, and you are freezing the things that I will be requiring this much memory, I will be requiring this kind of network or communication system, and similarly I will be requiring this type of software platform or tool which we can use and develop that particular system. This is done by selecting some off-the-shelf component, and this off-the-shelf component is something which you can say is a kind of ready-made component which is already available. So you can say that there are certain components existing and we are doing some behavior like plug and play. We are having something, we are taking that, we are plugging that particular in our system and we are performing the operation. So it is a kind of plug and play, and for that purpose some standard services can be served or can be taken with the help of those of the self component, such as some middleware, user interface toolkit, and some application framework or some libraries which we can use for the purpose of specific services requirement in the system. Then comes the object design. Basically we are trying to focus what actually object design will do when we are having analysis of the system and design of the system with us. So during object design we try to refine the analysis and system design models and identify new objects and close the gap between application object and the self component. It means the object or the component which we are developing for our specific purpose or for our specific software which we are going to develop. So that will be our application object, and of the shore component will be those software component or those subsystems which are already developed and available as a ready-made component, and we are trying to engage that particular component in our development. So in that case there should be a proper sync and proper communication between the application object which we have developed as well as some of the shore component which we are using, so that they can easily understand each other and they can communicate with each other. This includes the identification of custom objects, the adjustment of the source components, and the precise specification of each subsystem interface and classes. The object design model can be partitioned into set of classes such that they can be implemented by individual developers. So the basic purpose of our object design while we are analyzing, designing and developing the system is that try to find out that how we will be developing some new component or some new objects in our system, or we will be designing some new objects and gradually implementing those objects, and how we can use some component which is already existing and how we can sync with these two different development. One is which is already developed as an independent component, that is of the source component, and second which we are developing as a domain expert for our application. It means there are two type of knowledge when we are developing the system. One, the domain knowledge for which we are developing the system. Another, the ecosystem in which we are developing the system, and we are using some already existing component to develop our own system in that particular domain. Now, if we go for one step further and we try to find out that what we are doing during object design, so we are trying to close the gap between application object identified during the analysis and the hardware software platform selection also we are revisiting, which we have done during the time of design. And as a developer we try to identify and build custom objects. The purpose of those custom objects is to realize any remaining functionality and bridge the gap between application object and selected software and the platform. So again what I am saying is it is just the repetition of the same which I have said just a few moments back, that we are trying to find out the gap which is existing between the mapping of the existing objects which we have designed for our specific application, and how we are taking some support from the external component or subsystems which are already developed and which can be used for our purpose, so that we can easily mix those things or we can easily fit in with those things and we can use those things together to develop our system. So obviously we will be trying to filling the gap with the help of finding out the functionalities which are missing and how those functionalities we can add. Now, if we try to find out that what actually object design is doing, so we can say that in this particular object design process we are trying to transform the conceptual model into a concrete implementation, because we are trying to find out certain gap and then we are also looking for the algorithms that will be used for the purpose of utilization, and later on also we will see that optimization aspect also comes in when we are looking for the design. So while designing we need to define the structure, behavior, interaction of the objects that make the system. So these all are the basic things associated with any object you will be developing. The object will be having certain kind of structure, it will be depicting certain kind of behavior, and it will be participating in the system with the help of interacting with certain other objects. So that comes as a interaction among the objects. Now, what kind of input we will give in the object design? When we are designing an object, so what are the things which are expected to be taken as an input while designing? So we can say the conceptual model of the system, which includes the requirement specification of the system, as well as the use cases and scenarios that the system must be able to handle. Also the software architecture, programming language, libraries, the classes which are already developed and they are being taken as part of the input. And then what is the purpose for that particular system is being developed? Activities, what kind of activities your system will be performing, that we will take care. The second point, and the third is the output. As output we get the class diagram, sequence diagram, code implementation and test case, and the result of the test cases. So these are the basic activities through which we go through when we are designing the objects. And if we try to see what basic concepts we use while designing the object, so we can say we focus towards finding out that what are the application object. Those application object nothing but the domain object like student, teacher, assignment submission, evaluation, feedback giving. These all are the basic example related to the learning management system or online learning management system. And then solution object, some support component like how the ports are being used for the purpose of communication, how maintenance activities are being taken place, how backup activities are being taken place. So these all are something which are ready-made, you can say, available, and these can be used as a general purpose object for different application development. Then next comes the types, signature and visibility, the type of returns, the data type being used, the signature of the behavior of the object, the prototype of the functionality or the methods. And visibility is nothing but the data control or data access control, that is public, private, protected. And certain conditions are also associated with it like precondition, post-condition and invariant conditions. These conditions are applied when we are designing the objects and when we are implementing the things. Then very quickly if we try to see the phases of the object, so we can say that we have to do service specification, then component selection, then object model restructuring, and then object model optimization. These things we have to do while designing of the objects. And some more aspects we try to take care, like reusability, how we are going to reuse, how we are going to use the concept of inheritance and utilize the already existing things, modularity, and then how we are making provisions that it can be scalable, and the most important aspect, that security, and how we will take care of the security aspect of the system which we are developing. And in all these, the domain knowledge is the very important aspect that we have to take care. No matter how conceptually we are fine or good or comfortable in the understanding of the basic concepts of the object orientation, but when we are developing any system, it is very essential for us to know the things, what is happening in that particular domain. Then only we can extract actual purpose of that particular system which we are planning to develop or which is under our study, and we are doing analysis, design and implementation of that particular system. So with this I conclude this session here. You can see the references. One book chapter here, you can see the web link of that particular chapter is given. This chapter very nicely describe what actually object design means. It is having given certain diagrams. Those diagrams are useful when you are trying to deep dive into the object oriented design concept. And the course material of MCS 219, object oriented analysis and design. As you know, this object design is one of the unit of your this material. So visit that particular course material also and try to visit this particular content available on the net. These will be giving you much more clear picture about object design. And thank you for being with me in this session. Thank you very much.